right, good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to Reading, Writing, and Ralph, our bi-monthly installment, our author interview. This is another one of my favorite episodes. So I am excited to welcome Ralph back on. And tonight he will be interviewing author Ceil Warren of When Only Happily Ever After Will Do. So this is not Ceil's first time on the show. So if you guys have been with us for a while since the beginning, then you might recognize her. But before we get to that, I just want to thank our sponsors for the evening, the Kathleen and Eddie Arthur Hearts of Love Fund. So this fund started in Alexandria by an Alexandrian. He named it after his parents, some of the most generous Alexandrians that people might have ever met. I never got to meet them personally, but I do know their son, and he carries on their legacy of giving back to the community. The fund was founded in 2019, and it has almost dispersed $100,000 to efforts in the Alexandria community. So I am excited to see where else that fund goes throughout the rest of this year. So now, without further ado, I would like to bring on Ralph. Good evening. How are you?
Grace, I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I am great. I know you've been back in the country for a little while. I hope you are settling in, getting back into your routine.
I tell you, I've been back for about 3 weeks. I'm still catching up, and I'm retired. So I'm trying to figure out how the heck I've gotten so busy in retirement, because it shouldn't be like this. But anyway, there's a lot to do, and life continues after you stop getting paid for it. But anyway,
Yeah.
tonight's guest, Ceil, was the second person ever on the show, and this is her third visit. So she's been prolific in getting the trilogy done. She started with the first book was Turning Toward the Sun. The second book was Pushing Back Against the Storm. And the final chapter is When Only Happily Ever After Will Do. A fantastic trilogy, and I know she's continuing with her storytelling, working on another book. We'll have her explain that to the audience. And we do have
wonderful.
3 exciting trivia questions. So everybody, type into the comments section when you hear the question. The first one with the correct answer will win an autographed copy of Ceil's new book, When Only Happily Ever After Will Do.
All right. Sounds wonderful. Sounds like we're going to have a good show tonight. I will let you and Ceil take it from here.
Great.
Hey, Ralph.
Hello, Ceil. How are you?
No complaints. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's good to see you again.
Oh, always good to see you, Ralph. Thanks so much for having me on again.
Oh, no problem. We just, so everyone knows that Ceil and I grew up together in the Bronx, and we see each other about once a year at our neighborhood reunions for Christmas celebration. And in the past 2 years, because of the COVID, we've been unable to get together live and in person. So it's always good to see my old friend Ceil. Ceil, so update us. Well, check that for a second. Why don't you tell the viewers about yourself? We probably have new viewers since the last time you've been on, and then update us to what's going on and things that are going good for you right now.
Okay, well, as Ralph said, he and I grew up in the Bronx, and it was a great place to grow up. I mean, people think of the Bronx as sort of a rough area, but it was a beautiful residential neighborhood where we grew up, and everybody knew one another, and I enjoyed growing up in the Bronx. But I had a career in finance. I worked for a major communications firm, and got to retire early. And I started writing, which is, I guess, my real love, but not knowing if it would pay the bills. I went a more secure route for my first career, but I am enjoying myself with the trilogy I wrote, and I am currently working on a murder mystery that is a period piece. It takes place in the 1940s, and it's sort of toggles back and forth between New Orleans and Harlem.
Oh, wow. That's a good combination of cities. So yeah, I always tell people that I started out as an accountant and then I got a sense of humor and went into finance. So
Oh, yeah.
so
Well,
let's recap the story from the beginning, just real quickly. How the characters started with towards turning toward the sun and evolved in pushing back against the storm, and then we'll get into where they are now with when only happily ever after will do.
okay, so I know we're here to talk about the third book, and we're going to do a recap, but it'll be a little tricky because I'm going to try not for people who have not read the series yet to give away a lot too many too many spoiler alerts. So the series is a romantic comedy about a 62-year-old confirmed bachelor named Arthur who lives in the tiny village of Stones End, Connecticut, and who finds true love for the first time. Only Arthur is terrible at love, and he keeps screwing things up, making his trip to the altar one heck of a bumpy ride. So bumpy, it took me 3 books to get him to the altar. So, but for the countless obstacles Arthur encounters, he has an army of zany friends in the village who clear the path for him. And their journey is not without troubles. To get Arthur married, they have to traverse the whole gamut of human emotions and love, deceit, happiness, heartbreak, jealousy, hopes, fears. They have to unravel countless hidden secrets. They have to plow through heaps of lies. Lies. people lie a lot in Stones End when they're in trouble, as well as enduring high-speed boat chases, $1 million art thefts, and some international criminal intrigue as well. So, in book 1, Arthur does find his true love. In book 2, he blows it in pushing back the storm. And a lot of people jump in to rescue him. And in book 3, When Only Happily Ever After Will Do, he thinks the book opens where he thinks he's sitting in a great spot. He has the love of his life. The wedding is finally set, and then the other shoe drops. So it is a series of more obstacles, but this time his love is who he's marrying is the one who drops the other shoe. So she has a hidden past that no one knows about, and it sort of comes to haunt her. There's a tartan-clad stranger that shows up in Stone's End, and he's noticed standing in front of her bookshop in the middle of the night, very menacing, in front of Arthur's house before dawn, and even stands over her son's grave in the cemetery in the middle of a lashing rainstorm. So this man is very menacing. The entire village thinks he is there to harm the love of Arthur's life. I'm trying not to give away who it is. And but she knows who it is. She knows it's somebody from her past, and she has got to deal with that. And she's afraid she's going to lose Arthur over it. On the new characters, so there's a whole host. This is a village of very close-knit people, all sort of crazy in their own right, and they have to come together to finally get these 2 people to the altar, which they do. So all of the old favorites are in the book. It's a small town, so you have a gossip monger, Olga Kuczynski, and you have Oscar and Madge, who run the cafe, and everybody hangs out at the cafe. And you have Anna Felicia, who is a big-time troublemaker. And but there's some new characters that are introduced into the third story as well, which it's charming. Martin and Charlotte.
Right.
So
let me give the audience the first trivia question, and we're going to keep it consistent with the small town theme. So the first question is, Be ready to type it in, the answer in the comments section. What was the name of the small town in the motion picture, The Last Picture Show? Again, so what was the name of the small town for the setting in The Last Picture Show? First one in with the correct answer. You can use your phones to Google it if you want.
I know the answer.
I know you know the answer. So anyway, so small towns are interesting, but let me get back to even more interesting topic and theme in the books that might be sensitive to some. Secrets. Are they lies or are they protecting your feelings? And at what point do secrets become so cumulative that it amounts to the big lie?
That's an interesting question to throw out, because we all know that we're products of our upbringing, and we all know that life is made up of choices, just tons and tons of choices. So what makes a decent, honorable person do something dishonorable? They were brought up decent, they know better, and yet when they're up against something that they're going to lose, or they make these bad choices. They have a secret. They go to great lengths to keep them hidden. Now, in the first book, I use a line that says, "This, what is it? No one's lowest point defines who they are." And I'd like to think, as these people make these horrible decisions, these good people make these horrible decisions, that they're not defined by it. Their friends won't leave them, their family won't leave them, but it is always a concern.
So a lot of times people make horrible decisions. Is it to protect? Do you think most of the times it's protect themselves and their feelings, or to perhaps protect the feelings of others and try to control the emotions and feelings of others?
I think it's probably both. But I find too, a lot of times people, when they get into keeping secrets and lying, it's so they don't lose something. So you take in Constance's case, that her big secret, she went to great lengths to try to keep it hidden, and because she didn't want to lose Arthur, she didn't know how. But again, we're products of the experiences we had growing up, and she had a lot of loss in her life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination of things that drive people to make certain decisions.
Right. And we, as writers, as you kind of do some of that stuff intuitively when you develop your characters. Is that what you follow, or do you have a set thing in mind when you're developing your characters to where you want to take them?
No, I think it's more intuitive. I mean, if you take Martin, so Martin, we find out, was a lonely boy from a broken home, and he nobody really paid attention to him, so he escaped into his books. He was a bookwormish type kid. And he was kind of quirky and weird in the beginning of the series, but so it's no wonder with a childhood like that when the hot to trot Roxy shows up in Stone's End and lavishes him with attention, that he's dazzled. Where everybody knows Martin to be this very staid and reasonable young man, and they're all going, what the heck is he doing? But if you put together what he experienced growing up and so forth, it kind of makes sense. So I sort of just feel that out in a character and take it where it could go.
Yeah, that's a good way to go at it. And you can see we have a winner. And so, Grace, who is it?
Yes, so the correct answer was Archer City, Texas, and our winner was Edward Bungert from YouTube.
Wow. I think Edward is a first-time winner. So I'm going to, since we're chatting here for a second, I'm going to give out the second trivia question. So since the audience is warmed up, we'll keep them entertained. So the second trivia question, again, for an autographed copy of Ceil's latest work, When Only Happily Ever After Will Do. Second question is, what movie featured the evil Cora Papadakis who convinced her lover to kill her husband? Again, which movie featured the evil Cora Papadakis who coerced her lover to kill her husband? I love that movie. That was one of my favorites. So as the intrigue unveils and the new characters step in, tell us how they influence the plot.
So the menacing stranger turns out to be someone very interesting, and you're sort of led to believe one thing, and then it turns out to be something different, and that brings out. So while Constance is so afraid if Arthur finds out about her hidden secret, she will lose him. It actually brings them closer. So that's kind of an interesting part of the story. And then with Martin and so now here's an interesting thing. So Martin is hanging out with the hot to trot Roxy, who has very big hair and has a body like Jessica Rabbit. And the women in Stone's End, they're horrified. They'll do anything to get Martin away. So Charlotte shows up. She's Constance's niece, and she's there for the wedding. And love at first sight. She puts her eyes on Martin, and she falls madly in love with him. But Charlotte is a very proper young British woman and says, well, he's taken, and I can't go after him. Well, that doesn't fly for the women in Stone's End. They see Charlotte as a way of getting Roxy away from Martin, and they put the wheels in motion. So that throws a fun twist. It's a second romance, in the third book, and it's a sweet romance, full of troubles and getting them together. So that was a fun thing to add to book 3.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting twist between Martin and Roxy. I didn't see that part coming, but it certainly worked out. What other interesting characters appear in the third work?
In the third book is we can actually backtrack a little to the second book as well. That there was a love affair between Bertie. Now, Bertie is, every small town has to have one person that is completely unfiltered. So Bertie's a rough old girl that whatever's on her mind just comes out of her mouth. I mean, she's actually, and she has a shared history with mailman Horace. And Horace has been in love with Bertie his whole life. And so little breadcrumbs are dropped, along the way, and it's a real interesting story. Again, I'm trying not to do spoiler alerts. It's a real interesting story around $1 million art theft that brings Bertie and Horace finally together after a lifetime of loving one another on the sidelines. So that was fun.
Yeah, I don't want you to give away, too much of the story, because I think the folks will enjoy reading it. So I'm trying to stay more on the outline as to what you put into the characters and the reason why. And we have a winner on the second question already. So the audience is really wide awake tonight. So Grace.
Yeah, they are ready for these. So the correct second answer was The Postman Always Rings Twice. And Mary Wilson, watching on Facebook, got that one.
Mary Wilson from Tampa, Florida. Another old friend. Wow, we've got old friends popping up. She, Mary's. we see Mary every time we go to Florida. We stop in and see her. She's a good old friend, another long-term friend. The
Ed Hunger is a friend of mine as well.
so it's good. It's terrific. I'll give the last question since the audience is hot, and then I want to talk about elements of the three books that mirror real life most. So the last question is, in the movie My Best Friend's Wedding, who sang I'll Say a Little Prayer? So who sang I'll Say a Little Prayer in the movie My Best Friend's Wedding? So as you look back on the three books, and you've cobbled together this detailed story that transcends a couple of years and cities and the like. And you've got a lot of interesting characters, some intimate, some different, some the gossip, all this. What elements of the work resemble or mirror real life for you closely?
You know, I imagine all writers do this. They have their story that has all its characters and intrigue. And then they have an overall feeling they want to sort of blanket the story with. And one of the things, what I wanted to do with the whole series was just, no matter, I guess it's growing up in a neighborhood, I use that as my benchmark, and how we all knew one another and we all cared for one another. And even the people we didn't like were taken care of and brought into, everything was inclusive. We knew the grocer, we knew the butcher, we knew the guy who ran the candy store, and I wanted that to come through in the book. And it was interesting, there was one person who left a review on Turning Toward the Sun, and she said that she just loves Stone's End because of exactly what I was trying to bring across. That even the people that they didn't like, and were annoying to them, they weren't shunned, they weren't pushed to the side, like everybody was accepted, and the whole village worked as a community always. They always have each other's back. And she says, I really want to live in Stone's End with all these quirky people, and I want to go there. So that was fun to hear a reader say that, because that was sort of an overall. You have your characters and you have your story, but you have to give it a feeling for the atmosphere and what's going on in their neighborhood and their communities. So it images where I grew up. Well, you too.
Of course.
New York City neighborhood living is actually very intimate.
Yes,
despite what people think.
And you're right in the sense that it was community. We knew everybody, and everybody knew us. And whether you were standing out in front of the candy store, or Joe was standing in front of the candy store, or Tommy was standing in front of the candy store, you felt equally as comfortable standing with them as you did anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And you knew who the neighborhood gossip was. You knew who had all the inside information and all of that stuff. But as we all got older, we kind of buried the stories deep in our memory banks. So as you went through the writing process, did they all burst on at the same time, or did they start to percolate back up as you started building the story over the 3 or 4 years you wrote the three books?
A lot of the people in the stories are people I know, and everybody who, my friends and family reading the story, they're trying to guess, who they are. I'll never tell. But yeah, people I worked worked with, that were memorable. I think I told them on the last time we were together, there was this kid that used to work in this mailroom. He was this wacky kid. He just always had these fantastic stories and what he was going to do and where he's been. He never went anywhere, but we all got a kick out of him. And I sort of, I modeled Martin after him. Martin in the beginning of the story, used to think he lived in Victorian England and, dressed like he lived in Victorian England and was saving money to take a trip there. And, so a lot of the people that I have, that I know that they're in this story. And one person, it was actually a little uncomfortable. One person said, "Now, who did you model Mrs. Krasinski after?" And I could tell he knew. I just like changed the subject. I thought, oh my gosh, I will be in so much trouble. I can't even say it now because I still will be in trouble. But it's people I know. I mean, we all have wonderful, wacky, quirky characters, especially growing up in the Bronx. There's some colorful people in our past, Ralph.
There sure is. I always like the ones, and tell me how you answer. They come up to you and they're absolutely sure that character is them, and it isn't, but you still tell them, yeah, that's you.
Oh no, I haven't had that happen. As a matter of fact, well, with the Mrs. Krasinski, she's kind of a pain in the neck. So you don't really want to say who, and it is modeled after one specific person who's exactly like her. And like I said, somebody guessed it, and I thought, oh my god.
It's just amazing. But you do you bury the stories and bring them out, and the more you write, the more they come out for whatever reason, because we've got them all buried. But yes, the characters are something else. What, as you finish this up and you look back on the trilogy, what moments in the books, and especially in the last one, do you think touched the reader the most?
I had someone who read the book say that they were very touched by the love between Arthur and Constance. They really had a lot thrown at them. And he was just so touched. And it was a man who actually read the book. And he said, he loved it. He just loved that no matter what, these two people were destined to be together. And they kept gravitating back to one another. So that was very touching. And the young love between Martin and Charlotte, I thought was very touching as well. Love at first sight. And it was, on the heels of Charlotte, being dumped 2 weeks before her wedding, just the prior year. And it just, and I got a kick out of writing about Roxy. And you know what, I enjoy putting in that at the end when they finally diabolically get rid of the hot to trot Roxy. And she did not go quietly. she went kicking and screaming. That one of the women commented, they kind of felt sorry for her. That she sort of was a sad person, and they kind of felt sorry for her. So again, just reinforcing that these people are, they don't really take crap off anybody, but they are decent at the core.
So out of all the characters, which mirrors you, or are there elements of you in every character?
Probably elements of me in every character, but I probably more, as I get older, I probably more mirror Bertie, the unfiltered, crotchety old girl who just said what's on her mind.
Well, at least you're honest about it.
I can write Bertie in my sleep. I used to be more filtered, but it's like now, oh, I don't care. I don't care.
That. I think I read somewhere in the past couple of weeks. You don't get cranky as you get older. You just get less filtered.
See, so it makes perfect sense. Bertie is the one I relate to. But you know, it's a good question though, because I do relate to Constance and I do relate to Madge. And
one of the things that struck me in the book from a thematic perspective was there seemed to be this play between family bonds or blood bonds and friendship bonds, and it was I took it as a constant struggle between which were stronger. Were you stronger simply because you were genetically connected, or were you stronger because you developed a personal and interpersonal skill relationship? So, what's your thoughts on that?
that's interesting, because I come from a family of 8, and we actually all get along to this day. And it's not that, you know, there are times where we don't want to smack each other's face raw. But I think just through the years, you just build up a friendship and a respect, and you're lucky if that happens, because some people just have the bond of family, and it doesn't seem as strong as when you merge it with an actual friendship as well. Because I know a lot of families that don't speak to one another.
Yeah, I know.
I think you need both to keep you together. It certainly has been my experience with my siblings.
So, yeah, I think that's a fair perspective, and I think we've all seen our share of solid family relationships and not so solid family relationships, and very strong friendship bonds, and you know, I think both can endure and both can be blown apart depending on you know, the circumstances and how tight the bond actually is. But anyway, so where do you go from here? What's next? Tell us about the murder mystery.
The murder mystery is, I am so in love with this book. I am so in love with the characters. So it is a mysterious white woman shows up in 1940s Harlem, and she opens up a music shop, and she befriends a black saxophone player who is, he's an older man, and they have a shared past that only she knows about. And he senses it. And it's quite an explosive story. It's a murder mystery with, so if you thought there was secrets and past in Stone's End, this book blows it out of the water. It's a bigger story for me, a different genre, and I'm really taking my time. I work with an excellent editor, Mark Mathis, who keeps me focused and focused on the story and moving along. But it is, I'm having a ball writing it. It's a well-developed story with well-developed characters who are very deep and very, with amazing stories. So, and when you were talking about before the 100,000 mark, I actually may hit that. So it's just a very large story, and I'm at the halfway mark at this point.
Wow. And talk about Mark Mathis. He just sent a question. So he wants to know, is there a real Stone Ends community, or what did you model it after? Now, I have an answer in mind, but go ahead. Why don't you tell him what's in your mind?
So Stone's End is a fictional made-up town, but it is modeled on where we grew up. It is modeled on, you know, because like you said, we were very comfortable with, you know, whoever we were standing next to, and we knew everyone. We knew who not to tell secrets to because they were blabbermouths. We knew who to trust. We knew who to go to when you were in trouble, which was never your parents. we you know,
But
so it was.
tell them where we grew up. It's okay.
We grew up in Frogs Neck in the Bronx, and we had a group of friends who, to this day, I don't think we've ever had a fight, ever. It was just a lovely group of young people. We weren't into drugs. We weren't into drinking. We just hung out, and I don't know how we entertained ourselves night after night in the parking lot of Carvel, sitting on those ratty logs in the back of the parking lot. But
It had tar on them.
it forged friendships that lasted a lifetime, an
And still
absolute
do.
lifetime.
Somebody needs to do a psychology examination of why this group has stayed so tight. And a lot of people walk away from their childhood and have one or two friends, or from high school, one or two friends, college, one or two friends. But we're talking about 30 to 40 people that have maintained friendships for 60 plus years. That's a large number.
And it's interesting, and I don't know how everybody else feels, but anyone in that group can call me and say, Ceil, I need you, and I would say I'm on my way.
Right. Yeah, I think we all feel that way. We all feel that way. But so, Mark, I hope that suffices your question. So, Ceil, it's, as always, it has been a pleasure. And it looks like we stumped everybody with the last question. But and I thought that was the easiest of the three.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. Thank you for having me on for a third time, and for anyone who honors me with reading my books. Authors, especially independent authors, live and die on reviews. So I would greatly appreciate anybody, and it doesn't have to be a review. It could just be a rating that you can leave. But Amazon pays a lot of attention to those. So thank you. And the book is available. The series is available on all online retailers. So Kobo, Barnes and Noble, and Amazon, and so forth. So. Thank you, Ralph. It was
great. And the trivia winners, please type in your information, your contact information, get it to Grace Arnold, who's the show producer, and so Ceil can get those books signed and out to you guys. So anyway, Ceil, it's always good having you on. It's always good catching up, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
And stay well and stay happy.
And you say hi to Janet for me.
Will do.
Okay.
All right, good show. I loved that story that you guys ended with about your friend group. That was fascinating, and I think a nice juxtaposition to this kind of chaotic trilogy of a bunch of different people that we've got going on. So you're back on in 2 weeks. Preface a little bit of who we will be seeing then.
2 weeks, we will see Ed Moser back with his latest work, The Lost History of the Capitol. Fascinating stories about things that have taken place inside and around the People's House there in D.C. I read it. It reads like an Edgar Allan Poe storybook, but it's all historically and factually correct. So very interesting perspective on the things they don't tell you in the history books.
All right, wonderful. I am excited. And everyone, we have ZTV throughout this week and next week before we get to Ralph's next show. But until we do, be the good news in someone's life.